So at the end of my first ever bout of books, I read or at least finished 3 books, and I read a total of 1006 pages, which I'm counting as a success. Although I did let it take priority over my uni work for a little bit too long, but we're going to ignore that part. So the first book that I finished was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I could honestly find no flaw in this book. After my favourite character died, I did kind of get into a little bit of a slump with it, but I can't fault it. This book is about the Buendia family who found the fictional South American town of Macondo, and the book kind of chronicles multiple generations of this family. So I'm just going to talk about 3 of the themes that I picked up on in this book. The first one was obviously solitude. Each of the family members suffers from their own brand of solitude. This manifests in different ways, not necessarily the conventional sense of just being on your own. Sometimes they're obviously surrounded by family, but they still have this kind of self-induced solitude, this kind of wall that stops them from connecting to the family or to life. And on the subject of characters, they're all really eccentric, and there's something about each of them that makes you remember them. The Buendia family are gonna stay in my heart for a long time. So the second theme that I picked up on was time. Time works really strangely in this book. It seems to move forwards without you even noticing. The way the book is actually written, I feel like the paragraphs don't always start afresh when it starts a new subject, so you have this kind of drifty flow to it. One of the themes in the book is that time can stumble and trip and stop and go back, and sometimes it can act in a circle. I think the way the writing is really captures that. And then finally, obviously, there's the theme of reality and the way that people get kind of separated from reality sometimes. And because it's magical realism, the things that happen are just accepted as a normal part of life, and so as the reader you accept them, and that kind of distorts your own perception of reality. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of really good, well presented themes in this book. Also, there are a lot of injustices that happen within this book, and each time they happened my stomach just dropped. So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. If it sounds like something you're interested in, I would definitely pick it up. If you're interested in magical realism, this is pretty much supposed to be like the grandfather of magical realism, so I would definitely pick it up. I would also, and this is kind of a strange recommendation, but if you like The Sims, where people write legacy stories, so they'll play The Sims and play it through a lot of different generations of the same family, and then they'll write a story around that and kind of fictionalize it. If you like that kind of thing, which I love, that's my favourite part of playing The Sims, you will probably like this book, I feel like. And I'm also getting really attached to this copy of it. I know it's not the most beautiful of things, and it's really old and battered, and there's some really disgusting pages in here, let me tell you. It's from the library, but I'm really attached to it now and I do not want to give it back. This is a problem. I then finished, finally, A Dance with Dragons Part 1, Dreams and Dust by George R.R. Martin, which is the first part of the 5th book, so I'm not going to say anything about the plot. Unfortunately, this is probably my least favourite so far. I just didn't really enjoy any of the characters in this book, I'm going to be honest. One of the characters that I've previously liked has changed a lot. His mindset had completely changed. It went to a really dark place, and now I'm aware that violence, and especially sexual violence towards women in this series, has been a thing that has continued throughout it, but I definitely noticed it more and more in this book, and I feel like it's because of that character that I mentioned. For this book, I felt like he had a lot more respect for women, so in losing that perspective, it kind of takes away the judgment from the other men in the book and the way that they think. George R.R. Martin is really good at developing characters, so I have no doubts that he's not going to get stuck in this mindset forever. It just made this book very difficult for me to get through. I had to put it down for a while because it was making me very uncomfortable. One thing that I actually really loved about this book, to end on a high note, is the magic. I feel like a lot more of the magic is beginning to be explained now. I'm giving this a 2.5, I feel. Probably bump it up to a 3 on Goodreads. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I won't do a full review of A Dance with Dragons until I've read part 2. So after that I was going to finish Jane Eyre, but because I just read a big book, I didn't really want to get involved in another big book straight away. So I picked up this quite short book called Reasons She Goes to the Woods by Deborah K. Davies. I got this out of the library at uni about a month ago and I've kept renewing it since. So this is about a girl called Pearl, and it follows her from her childhood into her teenage years. It's down on Goodreads as a coming of age novel. I wouldn't call it that, and it's down here as a novel, and I wouldn't call it that either. This is told in vignettes across this girl's early life. It is very dark, it is very disturbing, it involves a lot of sex and sexual awakening, I guess. If you know what Electra complex is, it's basically the gender bent version of the Oedipus complex, so that is involved. This book also deals with characters who have mental illnesses, and I don't know whether it's a realistic depiction or not. I don't know if I liked it or not. It's very new, it's very different. It doesn't feel like a novel in the conventional sense. So it was very hard to rate it in terms of that. A book that I can't rate in any way. One thing I will say about this is that it uses such beautiful language. It is very earthy and it uses a lot of touch and feel senses, which is something I feel like is quite unusual. On the one hand, I thought there wasn't really a point to this book and there was no real meaning behind it. There was nothing that you could take from it as, you know, like inspiration or anything like that. But then I was thinking, is that a thing that books need? Especially this kind of book, which is kind of in a different category to a normal novel. Does it need a meaning? Or can it just show a part of a person's life without it having to mean anything? I feel like if you like unusual books with unusual layouts and unusual characters, then you would probably like this. It is very well written. So I still don't have a rating for this even after rambling to the camera for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to leave it at that. I did start reading Red Shirts by John Scalzi, which I'm reading with Michael from Bitten by Radioactive Book. I'm really enjoying my first buddy reads, and this book is so meta and really amusing, especially from a writer's perspective, especially from a writer's perspective and also a Star Trek fan's perspective. I also picked up Jane Eyre again yesterday and read about 15% of it, which I was not planning on doing. I'm just so involved in this story and it's really surprised me. So that was that. If you have any thoughts about any of the books that I've mentioned, leave a comment down below, and also leave a link to your own wrap-up if you've done one. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye!